Where did you guys go? Did you guys ever like go out to lunch together? Like, hey, let's go get some ramen.
Well, there was some conference room D, Davios.
Yeah, there's a lot of
there was that.
Davios?
We were in a building at 75 Arlington Street, which at the first level floor, ground floor was Davios.
Yeah. That was at Davios.
Actually, this might be a good segue into the philanthropic conversation. And you talk
Davios?
But yes,
kind of, yeah.
Because I don't know that we've ever talked about this, but there was like I think an underground kind of feeling of like going to Davios and ordering like really expensive like salads, talking about how to help people in the community.
Yeah,
didn't always feel great.
I didn't go to Davios for lots of lunches because I did grassroots, so I was more in the community. I did go to Davios for a lot of drinking.
Yeah, a lot of drinking. Yes, that was conference room D.
Gotcha.
That was conference room D. Yes.
Oh, that's what you mean.
Yes, conference room D.
Yes. That's where like
I feel like I made that up, but I don't know.
I feel like you would
I think I did.
Yeah.
I don't want to own it totally, but I feel like I might have.
But everybody uses it now. Like even, what is the new Imari's group is there now?
Oh,
and they call it Conference Room D. And I'm like, is it just stealing our...
I know. Well, actually, now that I think I do feel like maybe I did create that name and
you should have copyrighted.
There is something that I might have created a legacy in my one part of my life of naming. I do love naming things. I'm a big namer.
Yeah.
Yes.
I like to name things too.
I have an imaginary company called Name Dropper LLC.
Name Dropper
My friend
LLC?
Kate Leahy, Portland, Maine. She'll appreciate this. If she
Why don't you just buy up that domain and just hold it for now?
I have thought about it of like just
do it,
naming things.
Just do it.
Yeah. Well, there it is.
Let's do it.
Oh my gosh. All right. Well, should we get into this? Let's get into it. Yeah. Welcome to are we episode 10?
This is episode 10.
Episode 10. We are like 90% of the way through our season 1. Yeah.
Yeah.
And soon going live. So that won't make sense in terms of if you're watching this
at this point,
chronological order. But welcome to the Ripple Effect. I'm co-host Marybeth Campbell, CEO of Worcester Community Action Council. To my right,
it is I, the one and only Ronald Waddell, also known as the aggressive pedestrian. If you were typed into last episode,
named episode 9, aggressive pedestrian, and yet to be determined what we're going to call this episode. It will depend on what happens over the next 57 minutes.
Name dropper,
but we have an exciting, awesome guest and good friend, Natanja Craig Oquendo, CEO, president and CEO of the Boston Women's Fund. I'm making you.
Let's go.
No, a lot of people will make me the president.
I'm going to
accept it, but I really am I am the executive director.
All right.
We should talk about that.
We should talk about that.
Because we can get into it right now because I want you to talk about Boston Women's Fund and your work and just your origin story. Yeah. You can include personal things if you want to, but also your career trajectory. But just quickly on the title thing. Yeah. I just had my title changed.
To what?
CEO, from executive director.
As you should.
To CEO.
As you should.
I never would have done it because I don't.
Should I do it?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Well, you have a slightly different situation, but yes, because you're founder.
Okay.
So you get that cool. You get that cool attribute of being founder.
Yep.
But I don't care what people call me, and I'm sure people call me all kinds of things.
Marrio.
But I was approached by different women asking me to think about changing my title in an effort of unity for women in the city who more often are called executive director and our male counterparts CEO. It has not changed anything relevant to what I do every single day. My mom thinks it's cool that I'm CEO, I guess, although she didn't really even realize that I took her on a tour of our office when we first opened, and she uses a wheelchair, and I'm like wheeling her around, and she's like, who runs this place? And I was like, what do you mean?
CEO's in charge.
I'm very glad that you asked.
Like, who's the boss here? And I'm like, I'm me. She's like, you are? And I was like, oh my God, yes. But anyway, so executive director, Boston Women's Fund, but we advocating for ourselves as women and parity in the ecosystem. I'm behind you 100%. Let's talk to your board.
Okay.
Let's ring them up.
Maybe you can join my board. That would be lovely.
We could get into a lot of... we could do be on each other's boards. This is not a terrible idea.
It's not.
We'll table that.
It's not.
Okay. So tell us a little bit about you a little bit. How did you get to the Boston Women's Fund, and what is the Boston Women's Fund?
Yeah. So first, I think before I jump into the Boston Women's Fund, which has been the most exciting.
How long have you been there?
Challenging.
How long have you been there?
It'll be 4 years in September. So let me just give you my philanthropic venture, because I never thought that I would end up in philanthropy. So I'm biracial. My parents, my mom is white, my dad is black. They got married in about 1969. I'm going to give you this because it tells you a little bit of how I come to the work.
Origin story. We've done ours.
Oh, please. Okay, so
it's welcome here.
Yeah, I'm looking for it. Yeah.
All right. So my mother came into the marriage with 2 fully white children that my dad adopted. So they had 4 biracial children, 6 of us all together, only 1 boy.
6 of you.
They kept trying for that boy.
Yeah.
Wow.
But they stopped at perfection. That would be me. Yes.
My sons. This is interesting now, just because my sons talk about biracial kids, and they told me that if you have in their school now, middle school, if you have a black parent and you're white, they call you unseasoned chicken.
In school?
Yeah, like you're referred to as unseasoned chicken.
Is there bullying? Is there a bullying
I don't know if there's bullying. I'm just telling, like they come home and they tell me that.
I'm getting chicken.
Yeah.
Bully vibe.
Unseasoned chicken. I mean, that's definitely not a compliment,
No.
right? My children call me sugar cookie color, which is also offensive. I mean, true, but still offensive. Yeah.
Your own children.
My own children.
Wait, are you the youngest?
I am the youngest in my family.
This is another reason why you and I click.
Connect. Yes,
the
that's
youngest.
right. Yeah,
because we're
always like, hey, how do we keep everybody happy?
Exactly, and funny.
Yeah,
also
we're
funny.
also very funny. That's right. Yes. Is he listening to us?
He's always locked in. Marrio is
number one super fan.
Yes, Marrio. Thank you for that energy. So they got married in 1969, which was like very shortly after Loving, right? Mm-hmm. Boston. Literally right in the middle of desegregation. Many Jewish families were moving out of Roxbury. Many black families were moving in, right? So my 2 sisters were like, they would tell you the story that they were like putting grease in their hair. They were like, we are down with this whole crew.
Straight combs, all that.
All of it. I mean, they didn't need it and it looked crazy, but they was doing their thing. So I just say all that because activism was like such a huge part of my mom and dad, really making sure that not just their white children, but that all of their children had like the same opportunities. And those conversations were being had like around the kitchen table, right? Like just being really, really clear about my mom having to advocate much harder for her biracial children than she did for obviously her white children. And so that was being the youngest. I'm talking about like 4 or 5, but I'm taking all of this in.
You remember that? You remember her like
I remember
having to do more for y'all than another?
Oh, 100%, because she was always at our school. She was always advocating. She was always talking to our teachers, principals, etc. And my sisters, they seemed to be doing their thing. They were like at UMANA, which was a high school in Boston that's still around, and they were flourishing. So my parents ended up getting a divorce, and this was like the second like most pivotal moment in like my
how old were you then?
Probably 5.
So early.
Yeah, very early. And we moved to a shelter that I love to this day, Casa Myrna. We stayed there for about a year. And that was quite the experience, as y'all can imagine, right? Like we went from like living in this like incredibly beautiful home to having to like share 2 bedrooms with all of us. So when we got our apartment in Villa Victoria, I remember walking like with our bags from from Casa Myrna, which was literally right around the corner, into Villa Victoria. And I remember my mom was telling me that I'm a big girl it up a little bit. I promise you at 5 or 6, I was not telling the story this way. But I remember her talking about urban renewal, and she was saying that where Villa Victoria is, it would have been 93, the highway.
Gotcha.
And the reason why it wasn't 93 is because activists had set up a tent city. And she said, and not only that, but they stayed here for a month, really holding the lot and negotiating with the city about how it needed more affordable housing, specifically in the the South End. And I just remember that like really hitting me like, oh dang, people like fought for our land. By the way, it wasn't our land. Y'all know that.
Yeah, right.
They fought for land that was stolen.
Yeah.
But obviously we lived there. So, but I remember that. And I remember the other thing that I remember is the architecture. So, many housing developments kind of look the same, right?
Right.
So, but Villa Victoria is like, the architect was like a love story to the island. Like the colors on the house were like blues and grays, like they were like blues and aquas, like colors you would kind of see in the Caribbean.
For sure.
And they had this incredible mural that was like in the Placita, which you would also see in Puerto Rico. And that was also just really beautiful. Like there was identity, and so that I think had a huge impact on like who I am now. Yeah. I tell you all that because then it'll explain how I come to this work a little disruptive. So my road to philanthropy was a little choppy, as I think many things are, right? Like many of our lives are not linear. I ended up, my first job was at a corporation, and I was like, I cannot do corporate America. It was not for me. They didn't like me. I didn't like them. It was a very good breakup. And I started at an organization called The Partnership, which was all about retaining Black and brown professionals in Boston. Very shortly, I was there for about 1.5 years, and I was like, I actually want to be like in my community, right? Like that was important to me. And so I went to the Urban League and I did a little bit of workforce development there. And at that time, I had this interaction with the Boston Foundation. We were piloting a program, and I just remember we went to present for the last time. It was like a year-long planning. And I remember all of the program officers being on like a really big, long table. All of the program officers are on one side. We're on the opposite side.
Classic setup.
Yeah. I was like, what the, I'm in there. I could literally throw up on myself. I'm like, what is happening? And I'm kind of junior, just to be honest, like maybe 5-6 years into my career at this point. And I just remember the questions were like fast, being fired fast. And then when you answered, like they would write something down, but they wouldn't really give you feedback. Yeah. So you're like, what the hell is happening here? And I remember at that moment, I'm like, damn, is philanthropy like a partnership or is this like judgment, right? Like that was like a moment where I was just like, and I remember thinking, I never want to work here. If this is like what y'all have to do, or this is what your work is like, this feels really awful. We did get that grant though, thank God. Yeah. So moving on, Robert Lewis, not surprising after they tortured us. Robert Lewis Jr., who became the vice president of program, maybe in 2011, grew up in Villa Victoria too. So this is also why, like, I think, right, your connections, you keep them. His mother were very close. His sister were best friends. He was a youth worker. He watched me kind of grow up. I go meet him for lunch because I'm like, I'm going to try to get some money from him because I want to start this women and girls program. Right. And I'm pitching this idea to him, and he's like, I don't know if you've heard, but there's a report just came out that there's way too many nonprofits, and so we're like trying to merge.
Oversaturation stuff.
And that was 20. No,
what year was that?
Almost 15 years ago.
Yes.
And this conversation is still happening.
Yes. And he was like, so right now, like starting an organization probably isn't the best thing, but let's think about you coming to work for me. And I was like, no. You got the wrong idea. Like, and
I know somebody who tried to do that.
Yeah?
Yeah.
Do what?
To me.
You talking about me?
She's like, I will claim
I think it was me.
I will claim
because
when you have talented person,
smart people see passionate people and want to. So yes,
and not just smart, but like committed, passionate.
Yes.
That also give you
they
joy while working.
See the light.
I respect it.
Yes,
I love that.
I failed at it, but I already knew the answer to the question. Several times I asked the question. I just wanted to make sure.
I'm gonna try it a couple of times, a couple different angles, and see how it works.
And this angle, look at this angle.
It worked better.
Look at what is meant to be will never pass you by. I'm a true believer of that.
Everything happens for a reason.
Everything.
Yeah. So he was like, nah, forget all that, Rob. I'm doing my own thing, bro.
I was like, I'm gonna start the thing that I just told you I was gonna start. And he was like, well, come upstairs. Let me. He has a gift to gab. If you ever meet him, you'll love him. But so he brings me upstairs. He's showing me, and he's like, yo, I let go of a lot of people. And he was like, so he brings me to himself. He's like, just straight up. my staff's not really trusting me right now. And so I need someone who can like help be a bridge. And he's like, so here's what I can promise you. I know it's an executive assistant position. At this time I was a manager at like a branch, and I was just like, I don't know how this is going to look really funky on my resume.
Yeah, right. You went to what?
Yeah, it was like, so I was like, right, managing like 16 people, and now I'm like managing one man who's a maniac. And I was like, and so he's like, whatever I learn, you will learn. Whoever I meet, you will meet. And he was like, we will disrupt this together. And I was like,
Word.
All right, I'm gonna think about it over the weekend. But as soon as I walked out of the building, I knew I would work there with him. And so that was where I started. So I started as an executive assistant. The most pivotal moment, I think, was really around the cliff effect. I just remember sitting in a meeting.
So for the listeners that may not know, what's the cliff effect, Natanja?
Yeah, it's when you're on any kind of public assistance and you are trying to come off of it. So you may just, you make an additional 50 cents, let's say. And the cliff effect is when your finances can be impacted detrimentally. So either taken away completely because now you have made 50 cents more than you should.
So you lose the benefit.
You lose the public benefits because you're now trying to become, you're trying to get off of welfare. I had gone through that. I had a daughter at 15. And so I remember sitting in this particular meeting and I was like taking notes, and people were coming in, I mean, arms of reports on the cliff effect, right? Dropping them down heavy. I was like, whoa, these people are intense. And I was like, and Robert was like, yeah, just take notes. I want to kind of understand where people are coming from. I think at the time they were trying to figure out kind of a program to help support women or families who were having issues with the cliff effect, which I think we're still dealing with this to this day.
Facts.
I'm not.
Please.
I had a conversation. This is going to sound more snobby than I mean it to sound, but a colleague of mine is a fellow at the White House right now, and she connected me with the person who's in charge of the Domestic Policy Council, in charge of doing some stuff in Puerto Rico. And I had a call with him this morning about cliff effect work, because we're doing a lot of that work here. And you talking about this from your early times at TVF, like nothing's changed. It hasn't changed. And that's what I said to him.
I have a theory about why.
Well, yes.
I'll tell you that.
Yeah.
So,
No, I want to hear the theory though.
I think it's
coming up.
I'm guessing
okay.
it's a very similar theory of what we talk a lot about here.
Okay.
Yes.
Yeah.
All right, cool.
Yeah.
And let me just tell you quickly, like my story about being on welfare. So I was on welfare from the age of 14.
When it wasn't cool, like when you had to rip it out.
It was cool.
Papers you had to rip.
Yes.
Yeah, I was on that.
Yes. I had the food stamps.
You be in line. The people behind you, as soon as you pull them out, they be like,
wait. Like, I know, like, it was going to take much longer. It's like, y'all know this. Anyways.
Yeah, I was on that.
Yeah. So, but I remember the reason why I got off welfare very quickly was because, and this is why good social workers are so important, because first of all, when you go to the welfare, I don't know if y'all know, but when I would go to the welfare office, you wait there 3-4 hours. Okay. The social worker don't give a F about your day. She don't care if you're in classes, you trying to get off of welfare. She don't care if you trying to see your man buy some new sneakers. None of that matters. Says you are going to wait for homegirl. This one particular social worker was on me to get my daughter's father's social security number.
For sure.
He moved to Woburn. Now, I'm from the South End. I just want to make this clear so people understand. So when you grow up in the South End, you literally go from the South End to like downtown Boston or to Back Bay.
Like how far is that?
15
walking
minutes.
distance.
Yeah.
It's like 20 minutes.
Yep.
So you're in a really good location of the city. So you're not like traveling around. In my head, my family didn't have a car. My dad was the only one with a car.
Woburn was like coming to Worcester.
It was like going to Puerto Rico. I thought I had to get DR. I thought I had to get a passport. I was like, I don't even know how to get there. It was crazy. So I was just like, and his family was pretty poor at the time, and they didn't have phones. So only one person had a phone, so you could only call this one. Anyways, it doesn't matter. All that to be said is I was trying, but she said, you have to come back every single week. On a Tuesday, I was in college. She said, and it was an English class, and she was like, you have to come back every single week on a Tuesday at 10, and we're just going to check in. And if you don't have it, we're going to start literally taking your benefits away.
Oh my gosh.
Oh.
Yeah.
I was like, this. And so I just remember I was waiting for her this one Tuesday, and I was so anxious because I was like, she was like cutting my food stamps by half. She didn't mess with my, she wasn't messing with my cash assistance, but she was starting to talk about my daughter's childcare voucher.
Vouchers,
I was so nervous,
That's
y'all,
a problem.
that I was so scared. I was like, this is going to really impact our lives. And so I left. I literally walked out, and it was early enough, and I went to every temp agency in downtown Boston, and I literally looked for temp jobs. I was like, I'm going to get off of it on my own, and I'm going to drop out of college, which is exactly what I did. So when I'm sitting in this this meeting, right? And this obviously the cliff effect had a huge impact on like the decisions I decided to make for me and my daughter.
Right.
And I'm watching people like open up these reports, and they're talking about what they found or this interesting fact or whatever. And it immediately hit me that nobody in the room had any experience with the cliff effect.
Sure.
And
It was all theory.
It was all theory.
Yeah.
And I was just like, why are we not talking to people? Like, this is so crazy. And I remember even like getting hot, like I starting to get red, because I was like, it was like ludicrous to me. And so that was a moment where I was like, all right, you're going to have to learn how to tell your story. You're going to have to figure out how to disrupt this. And that took years.
Let me ask you this though, like in that, because were you embarrassed of your story?
Still, yeah, I was.
Yeah.
I think I was still too close to it, just to be honest. When I was working at the Boston Foundation, I was still visiting food pantries. I was still, you know what I mean? Like,
sure.
I was still trying. There were moments of financial insecurity, not consistent like when I was younger, but there still were moments of financial insecurity where I was still needing to go use systems, not food stamps, not obviously financial benefits, but there were definitely, it was still very close to me. And so
that stigma that comes with is crazy.
Yeah, absolutely. And being poor is expensive.
Yes.
Like, people don't get that.
We say that all
emotionally.
the time.
Emotionally, but like everybody is playing
time
you.
spent, resources. We were talking about that up front of why we put those cubes up there and this one stop, because it's time and expense of people. Yeah, people jumping all around. It's just. So I say all that to say that was the moment where I was like, you have to figure something out. It took quite some time.
Of course. Some healing has to go on.
Yeah,
for sure.
Some healing. It took me probably about 4 or 5 years. I started to tell my story. I got a couple of promotions. And then I really started to talk about how in philanthropy, we're not valuing poor people or they're right. Like, so when you look at it from an individual level, it's very easy to place blame. But when you look at it from a systemic level, you understand it differently. Right. And so I was of the mindset that I was like, we're missing a huge, like, we are devaluing, first of all, the people we're ultimately trying to serve by not having them around the table. Because I had some ideas, y'all. I was like, first of all, why isn't the welfare office open from like 5 to 8 p.m.? If you want people to go to work, go to school, why are we having our appointments during the day, right? Like, that was one idea. The other idea was like, why are we being punished when we're coming off? Why isn't there like a plan? So if I'm like, oh, you know what? I'm going to be in school for the next 2 years. Let's come up with the plan. Like, there was none of that. There was no partnership. It was very similar to like my first interaction with philanthropy. I was like, this doesn't feel right? All that being said, I did start to tell my story. I did start to talk about like having to go to food pantries and, just some of the things that me and my family had to go through. And that gave me some legitimacy to begin to start to build a grassroots strategy, which was really rooted in me being in community and finding the leaders who were like on the ground doing the work, but would never have access to the Boston Foundation. It was probably the most exciting time of my career because I met people that I would have never met before. It was the most meaningful work because I was also helping to kind of bridge this gap between like the hoods that I cared about the most in the philanthropic sector, and also helping them navigate that. And then I was able to like do a couple of programs that brought people in to help the Boston Foundation. And so but I broke up with philanthropy because I gave them everything. I gave them my whole story. I was exhausted, right? Like it's still a huge system. And I was burnt out.
That makes complete sense. I mean, part of for me, and my story is what it is. You go back, check it out. But I've been through similar stuff. welfare, homelessness, and all that.
Yeah.
And so part of like, even why I was like, nah, to Marybeth was I was seeing people profit off my story.
Yes.
Yeah. And I was like, well, wait, why don't I just tell my own story?
Yeah.
And use that to leverage.
And own it.
And own, right? And then see that as a way to be empowered. But I had to go through my own healing as well to be like, yo, I can tell this story from a position of expertise, not a position of shame.
Yes,
you know what I'm saying?
yes. Or trauma, right?
Trauma.
Because I think when I started to tell my story, I was still in it. You know what I mean? Like, so it was really hard to admit the things that were going on with my family. I think I'm better for it now because I can own it, and now everybody knows the damn story. So like nobody got anything against me. I'm like,
now millions of people,
millions of people on this #1 podcast are gonna know this story.
Facts.
And I'm so excited about that. But I think more importantly, like for my daughters and for my sons, I'm like, there is. You know, I think about this a lot with my work, and I'm going to get to the Boston Women's Fund, I promise. But
you are hitting like so many things.
Okay,
yeah,
so
absolutely.
but I think part of it was like I had to let go of shame so they could. You know what I mean?
Yo, Natanja. So one of my mentors just said this to me the other day, based on what you said.
Yeah.
He said, "Look, the battles you don't face today, you leave for your children to face tomorrow."
Oh, yeah, that hits.
That was a gut punch, especially like. There's some areas that I could strengthen in how I manage my own personal finances and like as a Christian, like how I operate within my home around devotions and all that.
Yeah.
And it was just like, dang, even my health journey, like all these things was just like, shoot.
Well, we've talked about that, and I don't think we've talked about it on live podcast, although you never know when it's being recorded. But I think it was after we met with Layla, we were talking about the healthcare system and trauma and
oh my God.
Transferred trauma.
Yes.
And,
prenatal trauma transfer, which is really, really fascinating stuff. You could Google that. We'll put something in the notes. But what's really fascinating about that, it affects your parasympathetic nervous system, which is before your conscious brain. And so this stuff is happening underneath the surface before you can even actually know that it's going on. Wow. And so that gets transferred genetically.
Even in the self-aware, self-effacing things that both of you just said, that's why it's like so incredibly important that you're both in leadership positions at this point, that and being vulnerable to share this, because I think that's part of the problem. And we'll get to your theory too of like why things are the way they are, but I believe, because I run an anti-poverty agency, like I believe it's very intentional that we keep people down, right?
Oh, 100%.
It is meant to keep people where they are.
Oh, the system is working exactly how it's supposed to. And I think here in America especially, you cannot have rich people without having poor people.
That's what we're built on though, right?
Yeah, of course we are. Of course we are.
This well, and I'm not a social whatever, but the capitalism that has made America where it is relies on a subclass.
Yes.
It was built with enslaved people.
That's right.
Right? And so in order for it to continue to operate, I need a certain underclass to make it work.
Yeah, absolutely. Yep. Absolutely. And I don't think we've ever been innovative or imaginative or courageous enough to rethink that whole system. I don't think we want to, just to be honest. America has no interest in doing it.
I agree with you. I don't think there's any desire to or incentive to do it. Yeah.
So here's the interesting thing then, right? Because like we got people chiming in, and part of our podcast is, and we got to hear about the theory, but is looking at innovative solutions to solve this stuff, right? Yeah. And so we're having this conversation. It's like, bro, there's no initiative. There's no. It's happening the way it is, right? So what do you do?
Yeah.
What do you do?
One, I think we're talking about it, number one. Yeah. And this is what I mean, like having leaders that actually have experience, that there's it, and like being at, you and I both worked at TBF, it bends conservative as in terms of the definition of a professional workplace, and being able to be vulnerable, and as leaders be vulnerable in front of your staff to be like, I'm talking about my stuff. And to a point, we've talked about that, like the emotional intelligence and boundaries.
Facts.
And we talked about it the last episode of like, and trying to lead culture and like dig down deep. Sometimes you're unveiling people and triggering people's traumas and the sensitivity about that. But I don't know how to a next generation of leaders without doing that and getting greater voice in the decision making. Yeah. Because it's not coming from our it's not coming from our public funders. Yeah. And I think philanthropy is shifting, but it's still not super representative, and it still has its own it's three-sided.
Yeah. I don't.
Do you see that? Do you agree with that, Natanja? It's shifting.
I don't know if I don't know if I agree with it. I think the jury for me is still out, just to be honest. I think that I saw a lot of hopefulness in like 2020 and 2021 when we saw like, you know, larger foundations were looking at, quite frankly, grassroots leaders, right? Who were like in our communities, who were making sure that our elders were getting food, who were making sure that our undocumented, who didn't have the safety net that many of us did have, were getting gift cards so that they were still being covered, right? Like that was grassroots leaders that were doing that work. Because many of us, and this is no shame, but like larger institutions were busy trying to figure out how to get their equipment to the people at home, right? Doubt. So, but grassroots leaders are deeply rooted in their community, and they ain't got time for that. They don't have time to like try to figure it out. They're like, no, where's the PPE? I have to make sure, you know, Miss Mills gets her medicine, and that was the work that they were doing. So, shout
out Miss Mills.
I made up Miss Mills.
There's a Miss Mills out there somewhere.
She's out there, and she needed her.
Miss Mills
she needed it. There's no doubt about it.
Yes.
Right into
we see you, Miss Mills,
because you've been doing your thing for a long time. So, but I think that's part of my theory is that one, stop discounting poor people, right? That we actually, first of all, like just pay attention to the history, like real quick, like 500-600 years, women, Black people and brown people have been up against a system and still have figured out how to thrive. That's one. So like, let's not ever forget that. So what's happening is that we're bucketing people because they don't have the means. So what we value in this country is resources, is money, right? And so when people don't have the money, we discount their opinions, we discount their innovation, we discount their expertise. So for me, the only philanthropy I will ever do, and I will always say in the philanthropic sector, I know that this is my purpose, is that walking with my community, you know, is literally putting what they decide they want in the middle of the table, at the table, because I feel like that is what will shift things. We've done philanthropy the white way, just to be really honest, with this like top down, you know, we have all the ideas now, y'all go do
the
it.
Research.
And it's like, no, actually, we've been doing it wrong. You start with the community, you start with their ideas, and then that's what you fund.
This is good. Tell us how you're doing that at the Boston Women's Fund.
Yeah. So just a little bit about the Boston Women's Fund and why me and philanthropy are back in a situationship. Okay, because we're not together.
Situationship?
We're in a situationship.
Oh my God, I love that term.
Yeah,
all right.
Yeah.
Okay.
So I broke up, right? I broke up with philanthropy.
An entanglement? Is it
it's on certain days. On certain days, it is. It all depends.
An entanglement.
It's an entanglement. I might have to start using that.
Situationship and entanglement.
Oh, Jada.
Oh my God. It happens.
You have your own podcast, see?
There it is. Situationship.
Write that down.
It always happens. Yeah.
Oh my God.
Let me write the note down.
How do you spell that?
We'll find on Facebook. That's something like that. But the Boston Women's Fund was founded in 1984 by like a bunch of dope leaders. And essentially they were 8 founding mothers who were like, we're not going to start a fund with our donors. We're going to start with our values. So that's one.
Love it.
Back in 1984, these women had the mindset to say, we're not going to make the decisions by ourselves. We will always make them with community. So from 1984 to now, Boston Women's Fund has always had a participatory grant making strategy. The other thing is that instead of priorities like housing or education, they decided that the priorities would be people. So back then it was lesbians, low-income women, Black women, young people, elders, refugees, immigrants. And the reason why they did that is because they said if we center the people, we will never shift priorities.
Got you.
Yep.
So that was dope.
Yeah.
That's a gem. Because
that is part of that's what's so frustrating on the grantee end of things. It's like, where's my bucket? Where's my bucket? And, you know, every 5 years, the strategy change, you know, or the North Star changes, or in like, where's our place, or like the sustainability of grants.
Yeah.
You know, how are we going to sustain? Because we don't fit in this bucket anymore, and the prescriptiveness of that. Yeah.
I always say, I was sharing, I had this thought this morning. I was like, what if foundations actually, when they shifted priorities, they actually had to go to the communities and tell them, like, hey, Black boys, guess what? You're not trending anymore. So we're going to move right over to the Black Black girls.
The shiny.
Yeah, you know what I mean? Like, what if we had to actually have those conversations as funders? Like, we're shifting. It's very easy to do behind doors. It's very easy to have a strategic plan. But if you're not rooted in community and you can't go to them and say, here's why we're shifting it, and actually y'all didn't have no say in this. This is just the research that Harvard just put out. So we're gonna go with that because that's who we trust, you know? Like, I just think that for us at the Boston Women's Fund, we believe in deep relationships because we know what our role is. We know that we are funders, but we also deeply understand the role of our grassroots leaders, and we know that their work is far more important than ours.
So check this out. I'm on y'all side, but I got to be that guy, right? Like I'm the Charlemagne right now. But what about the fact that I'm trying to get this done, and if I keep bringing it to these grassroots leaders who have all these ideas, it's slowing down the process. So then I'm never really moving anything forward because I kind of keep getting all these people to sign off on it. Like, I'm with y'all.
Wait, what do you mean by that?
So for instance, right? Like, I got an idea. Boom, right? Yeah. This is what we're trying to do. I'm completely with y'all. Yeah. So now instead of being able to roll it out, I'm going to bring it to the community. They're going to give me some feedback. I'm going to bring it back, and they're going to still be like, nah. Then we're going to bring it back again, and they're going to keep adjusting what I'm trying to do. Yeah. So I'm never really able to get a real traction and move anything forward to learn from because I keep getting different feedback because things are changing so quickly. So I'm also like thinking about that side of things, right? Like, on this side of philanthropy, I'm trying to move this forward. We're trying to increase housing, right? Yeah. Whatever. Let's just use that for example. Yeah. And so the more I keep bringing it back to community, which is valid and important, I think that it is also important for us to keep in the conversation. So I'm just curious, how do you balance both?
But are you bringing it back because it's still not reflecting what community needs? Like, is that, you know what I mean? Is that not translating? Is that, you know what I mean?
Well, I'm saying that even from the community, their priorities shift.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. But I think that's why you have different strategies, right, across communities. So I don't think that we need just one housing strategy. I don't think that we need just one immigration strategy. I think for us, it's really important to listen. I'll just give you a really quick example about this woman, Leslie Credo. The other thing is that philanthropy is very risk averse, right?
Yes.
Like,
for
so
sure.
we're always like, well, who is funding you? I just like, who really gives two fucks? Like, who cares? Like, why is that important? Do you believe in the leader? Is the idea good? Is it needed? Right? Like, those are the questions we should be asking. I think one of the things I feel most proud about is that I feel like the risk is in not funding the women and girls and gender expansive individuals that come our way than it is not. You know what I mean? Like, I'm just like, we have to take, it's not even a risk. We have to support these ideas because they're incredible. So let me just give you a quick example of that. So this woman, Leslie Credo, was a returning citizen. So she was coming out of prison, and she was, she had noticed that many of the other women that she had relationships with were having trouble with housing. Boston Housing Authority doesn't allow you, if you have a record, to actually, right? So projects are now blocking out folks who have records, whether they're violent or drug records, it doesn't matter. So she was like, we have to do something about this. And so the other thing about the Boston Women's Fund is we fund systems change and movement building work. So we're not, although many of our organizations do program, it's all general operating, but what we're talking to our partners about is about how are we changing systems? How are we creating movements? So it's not just about the one, because we believe individualism is going to kill us. So Leslie comes out, she starts an organization called Justice for Housing. She's running it literally out of her house. She's beginning to have conversations like Boston Housing Authority, the state, right? Like sharing her own story again, talking about not just her story, but others. And Leslie received $25,000 from us. It was the first grant she ever received. In that year that Leslie received that grant, she ended up making $500,000. So she went from 25 to $500,000. Harvard did a study with her so that they talked about like where our returning citizens were going for housing. For sure. So it was like showing like most of them are homeless, they're couch, right? All of that. It was like, it helped to open up that door. And now she helped Boston Housing Authority change their actual policies. And she's now talking with the state, helping them at a state level. So like, what would have happened if we didn't invest, right?
Yeah,
like that's the question that I always have to ask.
In terms of taking the risk.
Exactly.
And beyond the judgment.
And beyond the judgment.
Where do you talking about like how philanthropy makes decisions and like, oh, you got funding from there, and you started with Robert story of like, you know, we're in a time where they're trying to, you know, make things more efficient.
Yeah.
I mean, that is the absolute manifestation of complete inequity in terms of who does and doesn't get funding, right? This idea of efficiency of like, I'd rather write one check than two.
Yeah.
And how are you going to sustain? And like, you're already getting money from them. Like, who cares?
Right.
No amount of money is going to completely like change and revolve one system. Like you need all the money.
That's right.
And why can't people take co-ownership of doing and be proud to fund it together? Like that has always confounded me.
Well, and it's so hypocritical because as philanthropists, we're always like, who are you partnering with?
Yeah.
Who are you partnering with?
Exactly.
Like, that's my question. Like, when's the last time did we partner as funders?
Right.
It has not happened.
Well,
just FYI.
That's and I'm also curious, like, do you see your role now in the Boston Women's Fund as satiating what you wanted to do when you first met with
100%,
Robert? Yeah.
100%.
Yeah, like the full circle. Like it happens. Like your vision is like, you manifested
100%.
it. Yeah.
I'm like, yes, let's get rid of applications because our grassroots leaders are way too busy.
I got time for that.
Let's call them an hour and a half. Let's talk to them about let's ask them the questions on our application. Let's capture that and let's give them back their time because the other stuff we can find online. I can go through their website. I can find out who their board is. I can go through a 990 if you have it. I could talk to your fiscal sponsor. All of that is like really easy. And so just like thinking of ways to disrupt, I am only going to stay in philanthropy as long as I can make noise in it. I'm not here to actually hold up the status quo. I know how harmful that has been to our communities. So for me, it is really about disruption, dismantling, and rebuilding.
So bad. We're talking about I felt like there's since that pandemic, there's been there's a wave. There's this
trust-based philanthropy, that brand of like, and it's happened here in Worcester where like the Greater Worcester Foundation, which full disclosure, we're both board members. But the idea of like, you tell us what you need and we're going to give you, and actually we're not even going to ask you for a report for it. So that has been I think a shift here anyway of like, just we're going to give you what you need that you're telling us you need, and then just tell us what happened. You know?
Right. So like that, I guess at the pandemic to me, and we talked about it previous shows, it just highlighted the fact that it's broken. Yeah. Right. Like philanthropy, because people weren't really that tapped into it. The way the way that society leaned on our CBOs and our nonprofit and philanthropic community during that time.
Proving that we could do things without all the rules.
Was unprecedented.
By the way, we're going back to the rules now.
So this is what I'm saying.
That's my point.
This is what I'm saying. So all right. So that's what I'm saying. Like it opened up this little window of like, yo, it's something wrong with this whole setup. And so that's where I'm saying like, is that still going on? Natanja, you're saying, I think we're going back.
Yeah. Oh, that's not, Yes, we're going back in time. Yes.
Yeah,
we absolutely are. I mean, first of all, let me just take a minute on trust-based philanthropy because there's nothing that pisses me off more. So, I have watched.
I love that I'm inciting this a little bit of my naivete.
I'm like, I hope I have a job in the philanthropic field after this. I'm gonna be like, oh no, bitch. Okay. But so trust-based philanthropy is interesting to me because I find now we're trying to operationalize it, but white people have been trusting white people with their money and philanthropic funds for 100+ years. But now that we're talking about Black and brown communities, we're like, how do we operationalize our value? You don't. That's actually what you don't do. What you do start trying to do is to break down and figure out why do we have these biases against our communities of color versus white people. I'll tell a quick story. So when there was there's an incredible organization, they're doing really great things. So I'm not going to name it because I tell the story as an example, not as a ding against this organization. But this gentleman was a venture capitalist, right? He had a little brother. And he mentored this young man, mentored him from like a young child until he was like 17, 18. And he ended up getting him a job in like corporate America. And he was like, I think I could do this for like a lot of other Black and brown kids.
I'm with you.
Right?
We're talking about, yeah.
So this is a white man. So he goes to his people, right? Yeah. He goes to foundations and he tells them, he's like, no, what I mentored this young man and he's now thriving. And I think I could do it for like hundreds of kids all over the nation. And people trusted him.
Right.
Raised lots and lots of money. Yeah.
He raised so much money. It's a national organization. I'm not suggesting that they're not doing work, but he did not have the expertise. Do you understand what I'm saying? What we trusted him with was because he was a white man who knew how to handle money, right? That was where the trust was. So trust-based philanthropy has been around forever, but now that it's about us, I think that we're like philanthropy is trying to look at it differently. So I believe in just respectable philanthropy. Like I respect your work, you respect mine, right? Like I think trust is obviously a part of that, but I also believe that people deserve the right to like get $25,000 and actually fail, because we learn through that, right?
Oh my gosh,
like he didn't know how to mentor thousands of kids everywhere. I'm sure he had to bring in people and all of that, but he was not an expert at that time, but he got expert money.
For sure. Yeah. You don't learn how to ride a bike in a seminar.
No, that's right.
Bike reference. Yes. No, I think
a good book too.
That was a good one. Oh, that was a book. I have to write that.
Voracious reader already said that, but yes, always a book reference or neuroscience reference.
Neuroscience, biblical reference, something. I'm always reading.
I'm always learning in those moments. Yes, but I mean that's part of So when we were walking in, and I was sharing a little bit about how Ron and I have started our partnership and friendship, is the benefit that my predecessor, who was also a white woman, and a perceived trusted person from the decision makers of the public funding, got the funding that we were both granted on, which still are. And it landed here just because of that.
Yeah.
And
they didn't trust me. No, straight up.
Well, you didn't exist at that point.
Yes, I did. 100% we did. 100% we were a 501c3.
You're right. I'm sorry.
100% we were. No problem.
In the bigger picture,
they were like, you guys are new. You never done it as an organization. But we had been doing. So just to give a little background for folks that listen. Sorry to interrupt. So
we get excited.
I get excited. We have been doing the work under these grants, working with the same population for 4 years. The grant that we were under, the organization decided not to service. They thought it was mission drift. So I started Legendary with the hopes that organization would then subcontract it to us, right? They weren't able to do that. We were in conversations with the city about who lands this. No, bad, I get it. But they were like, you guys don't have any nonprofit corporate or operational experience, but these guys, WCAC, they do. So we're going to give it there. So they knew how to manage the money and all the back office stuff, but they didn't have, to your point, any of the expertise. We followed the money and brought the expertise to the organization.
Yeah. Yes. And what would that look like if like they were actually interested in building your capacity so that
Marybeth was.
Well, thank God. But thank God for the Marybeths of the world, right? But like that's how we should have started the conversation. Is like, how do we help you run a really successful nonprofit versus saying like, actually you're not gonna get the money, we're gonna give it to the white woman who can then give it to you and she'll man it. Like, no.
By the way, we're not lead anymore.
No.
The lead anymore.
I wish you were.
But, that's a whole different story. But
that's 11.
That is to the point of this idea of efficiency. Like we have to create, why? Why can't we, I mean, I get I understand oversaturation, but we've talked about this so many times, and it's always in that conversation, that it's always an undercurrent of, we gave the X organization money already. Why? What's and it's like, what?
Do you have
one organization isn't going to solve the problem? Why can't we do it?
Do you have an air fryer?
I mean,
jeez.
Do you have an air fryer?
I have an air fryer.
Do you have an air fryer?
I do.
All right. So air fryers increase efficiency. So what I'm getting at is that no, seriously,
I'm with you.
Culturally in society, we want to increase efficiency everywhere, and we're saying within our sector, don't do it.
Well,
everything we want to operate more quickly. Like me, man. Even in my microwave, which I don't use that anymore, but when I used to, because I'm on my joint. But when I used to, right, I would stop. I put it in for 2 minutes. You know what I stop it at, Natanja?
What?
1 minute 47, because I'm not waiting those 13 seconds.
3 seconds for me.
I want it out.
I'm the same.
No, I'm looking. It's got to be done. It's done. I'm taking it out. And so, like, it's this pressure from society, like, go get it done, get efficient, and then we're like, no, it's going to take time. So there's this,
this efficient centralizing, and you mentioned something earlier that just get my head around this idea of like centralizing things, and that's also centralizing power. So it eliminates all types of inclusion and voice. And ultimately, more oftentimes it's centralized in white power.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's right. And that is what we have to dismantle, right?
Yes.
It's like this idea that, and we all have white supremacy in us. Like there is every single day where sis is like, nah, that's that stuff they taught you. That's not the stuff you should be doing, right? Like, so whether it's like how my team is having a meeting and we're going to start with music, because that's how like I like to start meetings. I want to pump people up, right? Like we are going to check in on each other really deeply. You know what I'm saying? Because this work is hard and we're being traumatized by, less so in philanthropy at a funder level, but when we're hearing stories that actually also have impacted our lives, we're re-traumatizing ourselves. So even thinking about like, how do we hold space for one another is incredibly important. So I just think like, I'm like, I keep saying to my staff, I want to build a culture here I've never been a part of and I've never seen. But what I do know is when I see it and I feel it, I'm going to know we're there. And part of that is like bringing your full self to work. I bring my full self. Y'all had to hear my whole goddamn story. I done started with my mother when I was 2. Talked about Casa Myrna. You know what I'm saying?
We should join our board, Natanja.
But I bring all of that to the table. So why would I slice and dice this up? Because white America or white supremacy has taught me that to be professional is to hide that. That's why I didn't tell my story at first. It was because I was taught to be ashamed, right? Like I was taught to be ashamed. But if I was taught to be proud of like all of the things I was able to overcome, 14 to here, like, come on. And that's my point about our people in general, is that we're always shining, we're always winning, we're always up against something, and we still figure this out.
Yeah.
So so this is dope.
Oh my God. You remember last episode you said, what was my favorite episode? And I like didn't quite answer it. I'm answering it.
That's messed up because now what you that's messed up. Marybeth. I
said it.
Marybeth.
Kind of knew.
I know, but now you're saying that in front of the get. Like that was just me and you on the 1-to-1, and now you're saying it in front of her. So you butted up. You butted up.
No, you didn't really answer that question.
I know. It was a setup question.
But
I know not to answer that.
I knew Natanja was coming this week also.
Yep.
So I already knew. I had it already.
Valid.
Yes.
Yeah.
I already knew.
That's a little biased.
It is, but I don't care.
I respect it.
But you are touching on so many pieces of what we've talked about, just from being nonprofit leaders, from different sizes, different genders, different races, different sexual identity. I mean, there's all so many different facets of just who we are and how we bring ourselves to the work, but also how we're learning how other people bring themselves to the work. And it's like, there is always tension in that. And I reference this all, but even our own relationship, we've gotten to a point where we're just like super candid with each other. And we talk about this all the time, but I just think I don't know. I think COVID maybe helped exacerbate this a little bit, but also like, I don't mind being forced into it either as a leader of like, let's squeeze this toothpaste out of the tube here. And it's going to feel a little, and like white Catholic lady, grew up Catholic school. Like I have a lot of like what my comfort zone is like expanding, but also like, I'm afraid of I am afraid. I have fear of like, I don't want to hurt my staff either.
I know.
And trigger trauma, but also I'm like, I don't know. We got to get at it. Like because we are here for people. Yeah.
And most people who are here, wherever here is, whether it's my organization or y'all's, it's purpose driven, right? Like they're there because something happened in their own lives where they're like, I actually want to impact change, right? I want to be a part of the change. Yes. I know what happened to me and I want it to be done differently, right? Nailed it. So I think what you're doing is, I think that first of all, this podcast is already my favorite.
Yes.
Already. I know.
Make sure you share it, Natanja. Let people know.
I will. I promise.
Yeah.
Ripple it out.
Ripple it out. It's gonna have a ripple effect all over the world. But I was saying that like even I'm gonna switch us a little bit. But this last summer has been. I was sharing that this has been the hardest fundraising year for me. So like when we were trending, by we I mean Black women, right? So Black women were trending. Y'all remember they were like, we gotta get Black women and people with lived experience. So I was
y'all crushing it though. We struggling. Black men struggling.
No, we're struggling too. I promise. Yeah. I don't know if you know this, but 1.9% of philanthropic funds nationally go to women-led organizations. 0.5% go to Black-led organizations of women of color. Yeah. So I promise y'all are doing better. Wow. Not by much though. So there's still a lot of work to do. So I'll be working until that work gets done. Word. But my point is that this summer, I was like looking at pipeline and kind of thinking about fundraising strategies. And I had this moment. So I'm also, I talk to God all the time because I'm like, sir, if I'm not on the if I'm on the wrong path, you got to tell me.
Holler at me.
Yeah. Be real obvious, because this is, I miss like the little
the
signs.
nuance.
Don't put a rainbow in the sky, okay? Because this is going to miss that. But like, let us like hit me hard, And so I was praying. And I remember hearing this voice, and he was like, you think your value is in how much money you raise and not in your leadership. And I was like, because y'all, I was like crying every day.
real.
I want to cry right now. Just like,
it's real.
Because I was like, every dollar that came in, I was like, oh, I'm doing it. I had this like really strong year. And then this year came and it hit different. And I was like, oh, I'm not doing it no more.
Of course.
And then I was like, when I got that message, I was like, yes, that's right. My purpose is much bigger than just raising, although raising money is incredibly important. We're the intermediary, so we have to raise money to then get money back out, because mainstream philanthropy ain't given to our people. That's
how it works.
That's why we're there. So, and we also have the proximity, but like, I remember that moment just feeling like, all right, you need to reset this. Like, you got to reset it all, because you're not leading your staff the right way. You're not leading your board. You're not showing up for your children, your husband. Like, it was impacting every single part of my life. And I imagine that there's so many of us.
When did that come to you?
In August.
Tuesday.
So seriously, check this out. I was meeting with my good friend, Reverend Dr. Deborah Jackson, the president of the business school at WPI. Shout out Dr. Jackson. So I meet with her like once a month, kind of, a mentor.
Singing voice also.
Does she?
Yeah, part of she sings.
She be singing?
She we're on the
Let me find out.
together.
I do too.
Yeah.
You be singing too? Oh.
Wait, I feel like I have heard you sing.
This was our favorite podcast.
Be in an a cappella group.
This had been our favorite podcast. No, just kidding.
We've done some singing on this in the early. No, but she's
because in meeting with Dr. Jackson, I met with her near the end of the year, right, y'all? And I was telling her, she was like, so how are things? And I'm like, yo, we doing this, and we got this opening up, and I got this new program we about to launch, and da-da-da-da-da. I talked to her for about 45 minutes. And in real, Dr. Jackson fashion, 5 minutes left. She's like, that's amazing. Next time we meet, I'd love to hear how you're doing.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And so, typically, with a therapist, right, you got a week to noodle on that, right? You'd be like, all right, bet. And you come back, you do the work. Well, I had to sit with it for a month and a half because the holidays and we pushed things out. But when I got back with her, I thought about that for the whole time. And what you were just saying there resonated with me, because my identity was the work. And the question that I ended up asking myself is, who am I outside of this?
And you've been doing a lot of, you've been focused on a lot of your self-care.
Yeah, I have to, because that's what it was. The success and failure of the organization and the impact was I was interpreting as a reflection of my value and who I am. Right? So it was fully absorbed in that, taking stuff home, all those kind of things. And then having folks around to, like I told her, I came when I met with her in January a couple weeks ago, I said, look, that was such a great question. Yeah. So who is that for you in your life that centers those things for you? Because you can get so deep into it that happens. So I know that came to you, but who do you surround yourself with? Me and Marybeth, but who do you surround yourself with to help you not get caught up in that?
Yeah, I mean, I have an incredible. I know I seem barely extroverted, but I have a really. This is gonna exhaust me, so I'll go home and take a nap. You know what I'm saying? Unless we were going out to drink after. That's different. So
conference room D.
It's a possibility.
Gotta go to the conference room.
So, but I have an incredible family. My sisters, who have always held me down, are part of it. I will say what is frustrating is they've never turned around an organization or worked in nonprofits, so they have a lot of corporate ideas. And corporate ideas come with
that was my man E.
A lot of money.
Yeah, Eric brought that up.
Yeah, I love Eric too. Yeah. Shout out E. So Pops. That's the name
of the episode. Boston Pops.
It's Boston Pops.
Yes. Oh, what a good name. Come up with a bit.
And we got the story of how we got that name on that podcast. Go watch it. I think it's episode 4 or 5.
Can I watch?
You can watch his because he posted it.
Okay, that's right.
He pre-launch posted it.
It was eager.
But that's what he was like. Corporate ideas don't up. And this is why it's hard with our board members who you want to be responsive to. And there's a power dynamic. He was like, corporate ideas don't overlay and apply. Always,
that's right.
Yeah.
To the
but your family, but it's good that your family's trying to be helpful.
I have them. I have a team that is so dope, y'all. I just have to be really honest, and I'm not just I'm not just saying this to like blow sunshine up their ass. Like I have surrounded myself with
painful.
like, well, try it.
I think there's some. Look, there are people that do some perineum sunning. That's going on in California.
I had no idea about that. I'm totally kidding.
Perineum sunning is a thing. No, it is, man. It's healthy. It's supposed to like regenerate cells. Look it up.
I have going naked
Anyway.
into
I'll try
nature.
a different
Naked
way,
into.
I don't know.
But you have one former TBFer, Alexandra's Augustus.
Alexandra, yes.
She's awesome.
August is she is brilliant.
Yep.
Wow.
Absolutely brilliant.
How many
But I
people on the
have
team?
6 now. So
Cool.
I started off with 2 in 2020, and we're now at 6.
big
So that's
growth.
incredible.
That's huge. It's
and they're dope. And then my husband, I couldn't.
Nice.
There is
Shout out to what's your husband's name?
Jason.
Jason.
I could not do any of this without him. It's very clear that he has had, like, we've had to make sacrifices so that I can be in this role and be in it as deep as I am. And then my kids, they just, you know. Yeah. I make that pay. I get that money, so I get them through college because I'm actually trying to change. You know, I'm trying to disrupt these generational.
Your youngest is what?
She's at East Carolina. Shout out, Sassy
Pirates.
Wow.
Yes, the Pirates.
And you had a friar, a momentary friar.
I had a momentary friar,
Yes.
and then she went to University of Rhode Island.
Yeah.
Yep.
Oh yeah, that's right. I remember. Yeah.
Yep. And then I have a brilliant creative daughter. The daughter I had at 15, she is, I cannot tell y'all, like, she is both strategic and artistic, which I don't know if y'all ever found that,
That's
but
a
like,
use
it's
of brain.
very hard
Yeah.
to find. And
So what is she, 10 years old, that daughter?
She's 30 now.
No, I was trying to put you on the Natanja, you messed it up.
Oh, sorry.
You had her at
So
15, she's 10 years
12.
old. Yeah, I'm saying.
You're still young. I know
29
age is
forever.
real. You know, if I ever need a new job, I'm like, I'm gonna have to really do some stuff, Botox, all of it. But, so she's doing incredible, and then I have 2 really beautiful boys that come from my husband, but are all of my heart. So I think that is what motivates me.
You have
right?
a lot
Like,
of college kids.
I have a lot
kids
of
in college.
I have a lot of adult.
Yeah.
Young adult children, and I don't know if y'all have.
I have 2. I have a 11-year-old and a 10-year-old boy.
And they
That's
are
not young adult children.
no,
though.
but they are
At this age,
precocious
yeah.
children. They are on it. Yes.
Oh, they are.
They're
I love
mini
this.
runs. so
that
yeah.
makes me happy and
Yeah.
really proud.
Yes, they're mini
actually.
precocious. You're in the precocious category in the most positive of endearing ways.
Nah, I hear that. I hear
I
that.
love
Yeah, my youngest son Isaiah was funny. He was telling me just the other day. He was like, he was talking about work at school, and I was like, yeah, man. But see, here's the thing: you got to put the effort in, not just reading it, but when you write it down and then you repeat it back. Like those are the ways that you can really absorb it. My man said. Now I get that. Dad, I do. I totally get that. But here's the thing: they keep giving me the same thing over and over. Why are there people in my 5th grade class that can't spell question? I'm just mad at that, Dad. Why am I going to learn the same thing over and over? So yeah, that's the conversations we have at home with my sons about.
Well, I just want to
their
tell them I
experience.
was that person that didn't know how to spell question because I was dyslexic. So I just want to be kind. Just give them. You know, you should be proud of where you're at, baby boy. But be patient with those who are coming by.
Isaiah's not. No, that's his. I would never work for him. No, never.
You said
I have
that.
a
Never.
child like that. Like
Never.
I'm always like, what would happen if like we had to move in with our kids? Right now that's not a scenario.
I wouldn't.
Yeah, but there's one where like absolutely like you are not on the list, buddy. I promise you that much because you would be like curfew at 9, you know, and they're like, we're 80. What the hell?
Wrap it up.
Yeah.
Oh my God.
Dinner was at 6, and you
That's exactly how he is.
No dinner for you.
Very.
Yeah, and they just don't know how to like kind of
flexibility.
You almost respect them.
I do,
right? 'Cause
but I wouldn't work for you.
No, that's same. And I ain't gonna ask you to borrow no money.
Oh my God.
So Natanja, we're gonna wrap this up. But like
Yes.
you
have to come back.
Yes,
I
yes.
love
This
you.
was
You have to
Marybeth's
come
favorite
back.
podcast, so you got to come back.
I mean, I love the
she
previous
loves all of
9
them.
also, which 5 of them are just you and I. So
That's true.
you know.
That's true. But like, powerful story. Thank you
Yeah.
for sharing where you're at.
Amazing.
But we got this platform. We're going out.
Yes.
Yeah, we're
Black women, black girls, where you're at, what you've been able to accomplish. What would you say to them? Come on, you got the platform. What would you tell them?
Oh, I would say we already got it. Like it's already in us. So like when you're feeling that fear, I really do believe iron sharpens iron. So like connect with someone who's going to push you and also be there for you. I know that there was a question about sponsorship and mentorship. I'm such a believer of like, you know, saying people's names when they're not in the room and making those types of connections. Be vulnerable. I think that that's something I'm learning to do. I think it's hard as a leader to be like, shit, I don't know about this year, y'all, but my second year I killed it. You know what I mean? But that don't count no more. So like, I think also just being vulnerable about who you are and where you're at with things, so people can figure out how to help you. But just the reminder that it's already in us. It's already in us.
Well, we appreciate you, Natanja. We thank you for joining us on The Ripple Effect.
Coming to the woo. Coming all the way to the woo.
It was a 30-minute ride. It was not that
Oh,
bad.
You're coming back.
All our listeners, make sure you like, subscribe, share. Check out what Natanja's doing at the Boston Women's Fund.
Yes.
Support them. And we're going to get with y'all next time on The Ripple Effect.
Bye,
Peace.
Bye, everyone.
You're listening to The Ripple Effect, a nonprofit imperative with Waddell and Marybeth Campbell. Be sure to like, subscribe, and share. We'll see you on the next one.